All right, let's dive into what is, quite possibly, the world's most mysterious book. It's called the Voynich Manuscript. And for 600 years, yeah, 600 years, the smartest people on the planet have stared at this thing, and guess what? Not one of them has been able to read a single word. It's a total enigma, written in a language that looks like it's from another planet. I mean, just look at this. The pages are packed with hundreds of these incredibly detailed drawings. This one shows a plant, but it's a plant that doesn't exist. It's weird, right? It feels kind of familiar, but botanists have looked at these for ages and can't match them to any known species on Earth. Not one. And it's not just the weird plants. You've got these super intricate diagrams too. They look like astrological charts, sure, but they don't line up with any zodiac or star map that we know of. It's like flipping through a science book from a completely alien civilization. So when you see all this, you have to ask the question that's been bugging people for centuries, right? You've got this 600-year-old book that no one can read. Is it all just a big, elaborate prank? A bunch of meaningless scribbles made to look important? Okay, so let's tackle that head on. Is it a hoax? Because, before we waste our time trying to figure out what it says, we gotta be sure it actually says anything. And to do that, we have to start with the physical book itself. And right off the bat, we get a huge clue. The parchment itself, the pages of the book, have been carbon dated. And the results? They were made somewhere between 1404 and 1438. So this thing is old, like really old. It is without a doubt a genuine medieval artifact, not a modern fake. And this quote really hits the nail on the head. Think about it. For this to be a modern forgery, some brilliant hoaxer would have had to find a stash of blank 15th century parchment, mix up perfect 15th century ink, and do all of this to trick tests like carbon dating that, well, they wouldn't even exist for another 500 years. It just doesn't make any sense. Okay, so it's not a modern hoax. Case closed on that front. But what about a medieval hoax? Could some clever con artist back in the 1400s have cooked this up? To figure that out, we have to stop looking at the pages and start looking at the writing itself. Does this stuff actually behave like a real language? This is where things get really cool. There's this linguistic tool called Zipf's law. Now, it sounds super technical, but the idea is actually pretty simple. In basically any language, English, Spanish, you name it, you use a few words like the and all the time, right? And then tons of other words you barely ever use. If you count up all the words and rank them by frequency, they always follow this really specific mathematical pattern. It's like a universal signature for language. So, what happens when you apply Zipf's law to the Voynich Manuscript? Well, look at this. This is mind-blowing. The lines at the bottom there, those are real languages like Turkish and Arabic following that classic Zipf curve. Now, look at the two purplish lines at the top. That's the Voynich text. It follows the pattern almost perfectly. The odds of a medieval forger just making up thousands of words of gibberish that magically obey this complex statistical law, it's basically zero. This is probably the single biggest piece of evidence that this book isn't just random nonsense. Okay, so it's almost certainly not a hoax. So what is it? Even if we can't read it, we can still analyze its structure. And believe me, what researchers have found is just as bizarre as those mystery plants. Here's the paradox. On the one hand, it follows Zipf's law, which makes it look like a real language. But on the other hand, when you zoom in on the actual letters, the text is weirdly predictable. Almost too predictable. This chart really shows you what I mean. It measures something called entropy, which is just a fancy way of saying how surprising the next letter in a sequence is. In English, if you see a Q, you're pretty sure a U is coming next, right? Well, see that big cluster of dots up top? That's where all known languages sit. Now, look way, way down at the bottom. See that lonely dot? That's the Voynich Manuscript. It's not just an outlier, it's on a totally different level. The patterns are so rigid, so repetitive, that it's unlike anything we've ever seen. And so why is it so predictable? Well, it looks like the words themselves are built like Legos. There seems to be this super rigid structure. You have a prefix at the beginning, a root in the middle, and a suffix at the end. And only certain letters can go in certain slots. It's this strict modular system that creates that bizarrely low entropy we just saw. And, just when you think it can't get any weirder, it does. The analysis shows it's not even written in one consistent style. There are two. Researchers call them Voynich A and Voynich B.
They seem to follow the same Lego brick rules, but they use different words. It's almost like two different dialects, or maybe two different scribes using slightly different systems.
You can really see the difference here. This table shows the most common words in Voynich A versus Voynich B. Look at the talk spot. In A, it's dyin, but in B, it's sheddy. They're totally different. The word dyin is all over the place in the A sections, but in the B sections, it's words like sheddy and sheddy that show up constantly. So the evidence points to a real language that's been put through some kind of strange encoding process. The obvious next step for codebreakers was to ask, okay, what was the original language? Let's round up the usual suspects.
And people have tried everything. Latin was a big one, but every attempt to translate it as Latin just produces nonsense. Then some people thought it was a complicated anagram of Hebrew, but again, that leads nowhere. You can't form a single good sentence. Someone even suggested it was Nahuatl, the Aztec language, but that's impossible. Remember the carbon dating? This book is older than Columbus's voyage to the Americas. Every single theory has run into a brick wall.
So, after all of that, where are we? It feels like we're back at square one, but we're not at all. We might not have a translation, but we know a surprising amount about what this thing is, even if we don't know what it says.
And that's really the key takeaway here. The message, still a total mystery, but the structure, the how it was written, that's not a mystery anymore. Decades of computer analysis have started to crack that part of the code open.
So let's just lay out what most experts agree on today. First, it's not a hoax. The math just doesn't support it. Second, it's almost certainly a real language that's been put through some kind of encoding system. And third, that super weird predictability we saw, that low entropy, that suggests the real puzzle isn't the language underneath. The real puzzle is the encoding system itself. And that leaves us with one last, really mind-bending thought to chew on. For 6 centuries, everyone's been asking, what does it say? But what if that's the wrong question? What if the real masterpiece here isn't the hidden message at all? What if the genius is the code itself, this beautiful, bizarre, and, so far, completely unbreakable system created to hide it? Maybe we've been so focused on the treasure that we haven't appreciated the box it came in.